Source Nation. Join us now for The Pendulum with Dr. Samori Swygert, a platform that encourages the 4Ds of philosophy: discussion, discourse, dialogue, and debate. Prepare to travel from the past, present, and have discussions of future implications and projections with a correlation to African Americans. These topics are intended to grab your attention, cause contemplation, and encourage some form of action. From the world to the White House to the hood and everything good, the pendulum is swinging your way. Source Nation, here is your host, Dr. Samori Swygert.
That man staring back from the glass.
Changed my mind, man.
Tires that be gripping. Sometimes I wonder if MCs really know Max Eternal about to ruin you while the 10 feet are through. I grabbed the mic and turned it to Alabama. When just a dabber, my rhymes are guaranteed to grab me. I got funk with the bass and soul, cause I've been rocking on the mic since 9 years old. And I can prove with that stupid rhymes we were stupid at. And find where some Nubrins at. Hello, Source Nation. How is everybody doing today? I'm your host, Dr. Samori Swygert. This is The Pendulum. Very special episode. Very, very special episode. Before we get into it all, because this is going to be very good. You know, one thing I always say is I'm about going from the past to the present to the future. And we're going to do some connecting of the dots. So with all that said, hello, Source Nation. Once again, I'm wishing you tremendous blessings with health. I'm reiterating that. Health, family, love, career success, spiritual progress, and the accomplishment of your dreams. Now, Source Nation, we're going to get really intellectually intimate. And before we do, get your coffee, your wine, your water. If you want to turn your water into wine, that's fine by me. And make sure you pass me my shoehorn so I can put my foot all up in the issues of the day. Make sure to share the link with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms. I'm your host, Dr. Samori Swygert, aka Doc Swag. And I want to welcome you to my show, The Pendulum. Now, a pendulum is an apparatus that people associate with a clock. It helps gauge time and space. It traverses through time in a constant backward and forward motion, retrograde to anterograde. And this is what we'll be doing throughout this show as we engage topics, because we have to connect the dots of the past, present, and future. The show is designed to encourage the 4Ds: debate, dialogue, discussion, and discourse. Gather your friends and family as we prepare to travel from the past, the present, and have discussions of future implications and projections. With a correlation to African Americans, from the world to the White House to the hood and everything good, the pendulum is swinging your way. Now, Source Nation, very special show today. It's very special and near and dear to me, near and dear to my heart, and also for fellow hip-hop lovers, hip-hop aficionados, hip-hop connoisseurs, those that preserve the culture of hip-hop, curators, right? Those that conserve and preserve what hip-hop is all about, you know. What do they say? The pillars, MCing, DJing, dancing, and graffiti, you know. Those are the 4 pillars of hip-hop right there. And we think about hip-hop from the inception, you know, from the mid to late 70s. You know, people remember people like DJ Hollywood, you know, the Sugar Hill Gang, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, Grand Wizard Theodore, Busy Bee, Fab Five Freddy. We remember movies like Wild Style, Crush Groove, Electric Boogaloo, Breakin'. We remember the regalia and the dress code. Fat laces and Adidas. Sweatsuits. Kangos, cut off shirts. Even before they got into all of that, some of it looked like biking gear. Some, like bikers wear. They had the tight leather vests, and the pants. You look at Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. You look at some of their different outfits that they had. You think about Africa Bambaataa. And so just, hip hop is such a powerful, potent force in today's society. And hip hop started, it is said, and most people will say hip hop started out with DJ Kool Herc, Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx, New York. From him DJing parties at his building's community rec center, throwing a party for his sister, giving out flyers on index cards, and it evolved into a multi-billion-dollar industry where artists are generating millions and the record labels are generating exponentially more than the artists. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, and we're going to talk about why I'm talking about hip hop today. So before we do that, let me thank our sponsors because they make all of this possible. And they are Zuliana Health, Wellness, and Fitness, Paper to Film Productions, Revolution Mills, Renovations, Meet My Types Matchmaking, Blend to Blend Juice Bar Boutique, Urban Grandstand Digital, and New Covenant Praise Worship Center. Now, Source Nation, we're going to take a quick break, and after the break, we'll be back to talk about hip-hop, then, now, beyond, and commemorating the falling soldiers, the fallen contributors to this culture that we call hip-hop. All right, Source Nation, we'll be back shortly. Stay tuned, and we'll be back with the Pendulum. Peace.
Source Nation, stay tuned. You're listening live to The Pendulum with Dr. Samori Swygert.
Judgment you must pass. Just go to the mirror and take a look at yourself and tell that man staring back from the glass.
Source Radio Network is just one of the many platforms that is used to fulfill dreams of our listeners and create a purpose that will impact the lives of our communities, cities, and the world. It is often said that great things will happen when a group of driven people work together to accomplish one goal. We're giving people the opportunity to have a voice, translate words that haven't been heard, and paint pictures that no one has seen. Source Radio Network is fueling your life's purpose. How can you listen? www.blogtalkradio.com/Source Radio.
Never give up. Do your thing.
Welcome back, Source Nation. You're listening live to The Pendulum with Dr. Samori Swygert.
Look straight in the eye. Stand up. Stand up. Hey, stand up.
All right, Source Nation, welcome back to The Pendulum. I'm your host, Dr. Samori Swygert. Before the break, we were discussing hip-hop. I was giving you a very basic breakdown of the history of hip-hop. I spoke about, if you're just tuning in, I spoke about Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, the break dancers, the graffiti, music, the turntables, the MCs. I was talking about Grand Wizard Theodore, Busy Bee, Fab Five Freddy. I spoke about some of the movies, Crush Groove and Breakin', Beat Street. Wild Style. And Wild Style 35th anniversary is actually being celebrated this week. They're having something at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. this Friday. And they actually will have Busy Bee and Grand Wizard Theodore and Fab Five Freddy in attendance. So, if you're in the D.C. area this Friday, that might be something. Well, the tickets are already sold out, but I got my 4 tickets. But so, I was talking about the various contributors and builders and architects that contributed to the culture of hip hop. KRS-One actually went before the United Nations to declare hip hop an official culture. We think about how it started with 2 turntables and a microphone. DJs hooking up their equipment to street lamps in the park and DJing for a whole basketball park of people to party to, in abandoned buildings. If you watch the Get Down, the first season of the Get Down, that was a very good show on Netflix. And, I'm from New York, born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens. Very familiar with the 80s. Wow, what a beautiful time. And so hip hop has progressed. We've seen, we've went from Grand Wizard Theodore and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, Busy Bee, Fab Five Freddy, the Sugar Hill Gang. We went into Run DMC, LL Cool J, Kool Moe Dee, Big Daddy Kane, Rakim. We keep progressing and progressing, and I'm just right now just staying in the New York state of mind right now. Then we progress further along, and then your Nas's come, your Big L's come, your Jay-Z come, your Puff Daddy comes, Biggie comes, and Craig Mack comes. And so it's the reason I'm doing this show. We heard of the unfortunate and sad news of the death of hip-hop artist Craig Mack. Craig Mack was a hip-hop artist on Puff Daddy's Bad Boy label. Puffy had Biggie and Craig Mack as one of his earlier acts, rap artists. This is before Mace, and all of them. And so Craig Mack had, when he came out with Flavor in Your Ear, when that hit, man, that was something else, and then Making Moves with Puff. And, Craig Mack was one of those individuals that was just a cool brother. I think industry-wide, you wouldn't have too many people that had anything bad to say about the brother, And then he ended up moving beyond hip-hop and going more into his faith and religion. And so, he did that. And, this isn't anything new. I mean, Mace did the same thing. People evolve as individuals in this world, and they find their different callings and things. So we really didn't hear too much more from Craig Mack along those lines, as far as hip hop lines. Many of his peers that were out during the time that he was with Bad Boy went on to do several albums. Jay-Z, look at what Jay-Z is now. Jay-Z is like, over 12 or 13 albums in, a multi-millionaire. Biggie, was doing his thing. Unfortunately, he met an untimely death. Tupac, unfortunately met an untimely death. But, many of his peers went on to do tremendous things in the hip hop industry. Craig Mack moved on into the spiritual realm of things. And so, we found out that Craig Mack died from a heart failure. And so what I kind of want to talk about and discuss and share with the Source Nation listening audience is the importance of, when I say connecting the dots from the past, the present, and the future. I think this kind of all brings it all in together. It brings everything full circle. Hip hop and health is something that we need to put a pin in and spend some time on, right? Because the body count in hip hop, and I'm not talking about the body count due to violence. Like, we know that Biggie was murdered and Tupac was murdered. We know that Freaky Ty from the Lost Boys was murdered. We know that Big L was murdered. We know that DJ Scott LaRock, who was KRS-One's DJ from BDP, he was murdered. You had a rapper from the Bay Area, Mac Dre. He was murdered, right? You had one of our really, really revered trailblazers for the culture and a heavy contributor, Jam Master Jay. He was murdered, right? We had Proof from D12. He was murdered by gun violence. And we had rapper E-Money Bags, who was cool with Nas. You heard E-Money Bags on the Firm album with Foxy Brown and AZ and Nas. He was murdered. Rapper Chinks from New York was recently murdered. That might have been probably about 3 years ago. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably about 3 years ago. Stack Bundles, who was another New York rapper, he was killed. Right? Now, those are very sad, unfortunate, untimely, premature deaths by violence in hip hop. Those alone are tremendous losses, because you never know the potential that they could have brought forth. An artist, their job is to paint a picture, tell a story, make you feel a certain way by verbally using their imagination in their words, the way they emphasize words and sentences and stress here, and how they relate to you. That's what, music and hip hop artists do. Now, the other thing is that, look, there are these other untimely deaths that we have to address and speak about. And that is the death of hip hop artists due to reasons of health, right? And, it's unfortunate. Craig Mack, he died of heart failure, but let's dig into this. Let's dig into this, right? We had the loss of Heavy D. Now, you remember Heavy D and the Boys, the overweight lovers in the house, I need somebody to love me for me, Mr. Big Stuff. Heavy D was a very big contributor, played a very big role in hip hop and pushing the culture forward in the late 80s, early 90s, I say actually early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Heavy D, you know, and it was bad. You know, I think Heavy D may have passed. Oh man, Heavy D probably well over 5 or 6 years ago. But he passed away. I think they said he was walking down the street and he had a pulmonary embolism. And so what that is, working in the medical profession, I can tell you, basically that's when you have a clot that lodges into the blood vessel that supplies the blood and the oxygen needed to your lungs, you know, your pulmonary arteries. And so he died from that. So that was Heavy D. So once again, health, you know, and Heavy D was heavy. You know, when he first came out, Heavy D was a pretty big guy. But, you know, he slimmed down over time. Heavy D lost a lot of weight. He was looking good, you know, so it was kind of shocking. I think a lot of people were thinking that, you know, Heavy D was definitely on the right path as far as weight control and things. But, I mean, you just don't know. So we lost Heavy D to pulmonary embolism. Another person that people tend to forget about, but being that March is also Women's History Month, we have to talk about Miss Melody. You know, Miss Melody was actually married to KRS-One. And Miss Melody pushed a very positive narrative. She pushed a very positive narrative for women, you know, queendom, you know, and just respecting women. You know, she was married to KRS, so you already know that she had to be on that level. But she died in 2012, and they say it was just undisclosed causes. But you know, it wasn't a homicide or anything violent. So when that happens, you know, that's more so health related. You know, it can be a plethora of things when we talk about health related deaths. Like, you know, people can have strokes, heart attacks, all types of things. But yeah, Women's History Month. Let's not forget about Miss Melody. She played Miss Melody was actually in Self-Destruction. And that was a very great hip hop song, powerful hip hop song that had a lot of hip hop artists on there that talked about stopping the violence in the Black community, and specifically the violence that we impose and exact on ourselves in our community. So that shows you the level that she was on. So rest in peace and rest in power to Miss Melody. All right. Now, let's not forget about this heavy hitter, right? So we talked about Heavy D, and we talked about, you know, his size. We talked about the fact that he died from a pulmonary embolism. The other thing, though, the other person that we want to recognize was Big Pun. You know, Big Pun was associated with Fat Joe. Digging in the crates and Fat Joe's crew up there, you know, in the Bronx. Sad part is that Big Pun had suffered a fatal heart attack and respiratory failure at the Crown Plaza in White Plains, New York. Okay, and that happened in 2000. So that was 18 years ago, man. And he was 28. So, and Big Pun was nice. Big Pun was nice. A lot of people, a lot of artists did not want to rap against Big Pun, or when they were on a track together, they would make sure that they had their bars, their lines, they had all of that tight, because Pun was coming through eating. Pun, he can enunciate, pronounce everything very crisp and clear, and he had that rapid fire flow, you know. So he, I don't want to be a player no more, especially that with Joe. That was like a big hit, So, yeah, he was a member of Terror Squad. Terror Squad. That was the crew that Fat Joe formed, and that Big Pun was with. So that was a tremendous loss. And once again, health was a big factor in that. And so I think it's just like, man, we have to take into consideration a lot of things that we do when it comes to our body. Exercising daily, eating correctly. It's just a lot. It's a lot. Now, there's some more people that I want to talk about and mention, and that is next up, Old Dirty Bastard. Now, people remember the Wu-Tang Clan, right? Cream, cash rules everything around me, So when people think of the Wu, they always remember like Method Man, Raekwon, Ghostface Killer, the RZA, the Jizza, You God, Master Killer, Killer Priest, and then you cannot forget Old Dirty Bastard. Old Dirty Bastard was the type of person that just did not give an F. All right, he was wild, he was raunchy, but people loved him for that. It was kind of like, when you want to get hyped up, when you want to get hype and just wild out at the party or the club, and Old Dirty came on. I mean, Old Dirty was the one to do it. He's ooh, baby, I like it raw. Yeah. And it was just like, but at the same time, he had some very good lines and some very good flows. Good album. He charted, he did songs with Mariah Carey, so Old Dirty was definitely a heavy hitter. Definitely a heavy hitter. And so with him, we sadly lost Old Dirty in 2004 at the age of 35. Young brother. Young. I remember when he passed, being younger than 35. And I was like, man, that's messed up. But now, being older than 35 now, I'm like, man, he died way too soon. He died way too soon. And he, they say he died from a drug overdose. This is what's reported, but I question, a couple people question that, but they say it was a drug overdose. So rest in peace to ODB. His aliases, rap aliases, ODB, Old Dirty Bastard, Ason, Osiris, Big Baby Jesus, Dirt Dog, and Dirt McGirt, right? So that was Old Dirty Bastard from the Wu-Tang Clan, right? Yeah, we're going all the way in, and we have to remember everybody that has contributed to the culture of hip hop. Now, that's on the East Coast, right? But the West Coast has some very good artists. They have a lot of good artists, like Nipsey Hussle, Kendrick, Snoop, NWA, DLC, he's from Texas, but he's, definitely repping Cali, Dre, just, Souls of Mischief, The Far Side, E40, the West Coast, the alcoholics, the loonies, so the West Coast has a lot of Exhibit, Ice Cube, MC Ren, So the game, the influence and powerful influence that the West Coast has on hip hop was something that the East Coast had to take into consideration. From when we started out in the Bronx at Cedric Avenue with Kool Herc, like I said, hip hop went on to evolve, and so that took us to Nate Dogg. Everybody remembers Nate Dogg from his very deep baritone yet monotone voice, but it was always so smooth, and it always went with all the different music that they recorded. It's like, they know him from like The Chronic, The Next Episode, You Better Lay Low, it's Nate Dogg gave a signature sound to a lot of tracks that he was on. You'll be forced to remember. But Nate Dogg was another brother, another rapper, another singer too, in hip hop that we cannot forget. We'll be remiss and we would be wrong if we did not remember Nate Dogg. And once again, sadly, this is from health. Nate Dogg died in 2011. He suffered from multiple strokes. And so, strokes and heart attacks, very prevalent in the Black community. And much of it is because our lifestyle. It's not like, we're genetically predisposed, physiologically, we're just born with bad circulatory systems. No, it's not that. It's the fact that sedentary lifestyles, the type of foods, the custom of certain foods, fried everything, chips and, that type of stuff, over time, because, grandma always cooked fried chicken and ham hocks and all this. So, Big Mama did that. And so I'm going to cook this way, and then my kids are going to cook this way. And so this type of thing, it becomes just prevalent in our community. And so, you have heart attacks. And so heart attacks are when basically your heart pumps all the blood in your body to all your vital organs and extremities. It pumps all the blood, and your blood carries the oxygen, right? But see, what happens with heart attacks is, you have coronary arteries, and your coronary arteries are the ones that provide blood and oxygen to your heart. So your heart has to pump blood to the rest of your body, but the heart itself needs a good blood supply to supply oxygen. So because your heart is a muscle, it needs that good flow and supply of oxygenated blood to supply the muscle fibers that make up the heart so that it can continue to beat. Well, what happens in a heart attack is, over time, we get plaque buildup, coupled with, that's like cholesterol and all of that, and lipids, your triglycerides and your cholesterol. These things form plaque in the artery walls, and over time they get so much that it just causes a blockage of the blood that's supposed to supply the heart. And once these coronary arteries become blocked, that's it. You have that heart attack, because the heart doesn't have that supply of blood, thus it's not getting that oxygen, and thus it cannot pump blood to the rest of your organs, your kidney, your liver, your brain, all of that. And so those are your heart attacks. But then you have strokes. And strokes is when you have a lack of blood and oxygen to the brain. All right. Strokes are a neurological event, meaning your brain is not getting blood and oxygen. And so That can happen from same mechanism, whereas, you're getting a lot of plaque buildup within the arteries, and so it's blocking the blood flow to the brain, and you get a stroke. And that's what happens. And so Nate Dogg, he suffered from multiple strokes, and he died in 2011. So that was a big blow to the hip hop industry, the hip hop culture right there. And real quick, for those that are just tuning in, you're listening to Dr. Samori Swygert, aka Doc Swag. And I'm talking about the passing of Craig Mack. I'm talking about hip hop. And I'm spinning this gumbo. I'm stirring this gumbo up of hip hop, our famous artists and our cultural contributors that had profound impacts on the culture of hip hop, but that are passing away due to health ailments, physiological conditions and diseases. It's important. We're seeing a lot of this surface in our community. So that's what we're discussing right now. If you're just tuning in to Source Radio Network, The Pendulum. All right. Now, we spoke about Nate Dogg just now, right? Now, we have to move over to the Midwest. We spoke about the West. Now, the Midwest, slum village, right? When we think of slum village, we must mention the mastery, the greatness, the intelligence, and the talent of Slum Village's producer. And that was Jay Dilla. Jay Dilla. James Yancey, And Jay Dilla, he made a plethora, he left us with a plethora of work, a tremendous body of work, volumes of work, sounds that will forever be classic. The same way we revere, like New Yorkers, we revere DJ Premier, Pete Rock. We think of things like that. We think of brothers like that contribute to the culture. Well, the Midwest, Jay Dilla, he's on that level, and that soul sampling and, his MPC that he's famous for. His MPC is even actually inside of the Smithsonian Museum of African American History. I went there and I visited the museum 3 times. And you go up to the top floor where they have all the musical artists, black artists that contributed to black history, from jazz to soul to funk to rap, all the various genres of music. That's on the top floor. But they, that it's a selected, they try to be as collectively inclusive of all of the black artists, but that's a lot. We have a lot of artists, so they can't get everybody in there. So if you make it in there, that means you really did something. And so Jay Dilla's MPC, his beat machine, is in there. So that's major. That shows you just how much influence Jay Dilla had on hip hop. And so just with his work with Slum Village, working with Common, he really laced Common with a lot of good tracks. He's just, we would definitely miss that brother. But Jay Dilla, he suffered from lupus. And so lupus is an autoimmune disease in which the body attacks itself. And typically you'll see it can be very painful. And one of the things you see is, one of the target the bodily targets is that lupus really attacks the kidneys. You have what's called lupus nephritis. And so you get all this inflammation of the kidneys. And when your kidneys go, a lot of things go and people don't, understand. See, your kidneys regulate your blood pressure because you have a hormone called aldosterone that regulates the amount of sodium that you retain in your body or release from your body. And so sodium, salt, that the more sodium that you have circulating, the more fluid you retain. All right. And this is why doctors say reduce your sodium intake, because then you start accumulating fluid in the body. And this can lead to congestive heart failure, lead to high blood pressure. The kidneys produce another hormone called erythropoietin. And erythropoietin is responsible for what? Manufacturing red blood cells. It helps stimulate the process of red blood cell manufacturing. Right? So that's what the kidneys do. That's what the kidneys do also. So when you have, and then aside from just fluid balance, you drink water and you urinate. These are the various things that the kidneys do. So lupus attacks the kidneys. That's one of the organs that in the healthcare field where I work, we say target organs. And so the kidneys are one of the target organs. So you have lupus nephritis. So it attacks that and tears all that down. Aside from the skin, some other cardiovascular attacks. But yeah, so Jay Dilla, he suffered from lupus, and he ended up passing away, and that was a big blow. So many people were hurt from losing Jay Dilla. Slum Village was never the same, and Slum Village lost another artist we'll talk about, but Jay Dilla, yeah. So he passed away in 2006, better known as James DeWitt Yancey. All right. Now, Slum Village also had a rapper by the name of Batin, Baatin, and he suffered from a lot of mental health issues, bipolar, schizophrenia, and a lot of the other manifestations that come with that. Now, I forget the actual cause of death, but it was health related, and so he died. And that was a very, very, very tough thing for people to swallow. Especially have two individuals from the group. I mean, that's it's very, very, very sad and tragic loss. Let's move on. Now, we had Professor X of X Clan. People remember X Clan. To the east, my brother, to the east. X Clan, man, they came through in the 90s, man. And when I say they came with the knowledge, they came very pro-black. Like when you think of like pro-black rap and thinking back to African ancestry, you think of X Clan and you think of Public Enemy. And so, they were out around the same time, and, they were really kicking in the door. You had Brother J, Professor X, they were X Clan was something to reckon with. Period. That's all I'll say. It was something to reckon with. And Professor X actually was I believe he was the son of Sonny Carson. Sonny Carson was a community leader, I believe he was also associated with New Africa. And he grew up rough in Brooklyn. Used to be in a gang. And then he ended up turning his life around and getting involved in like community activism, and just trying to, be overall positive for upliftment of black people. And his son was Professor X. And so X Clan was their thing right there. And we lost Professor X to spinal meningitis. He died of spinal meningitis. And let me see, not to always come with my facts. My Professor X, the overseer, he passed away in 2006. Okay, and it was spinal meningitis, and so some of the songs and the albums, To the East, Black Words, Exodus, and he had 2 solo albums, Years of the Nine on the black hand side, and Puss in Boots, The Struggle Continues. So, and he left behind 2 daughters. So we lost Professor X, the overseer, in 2006 from spinal meningitis. Who else? Oh my gosh, man. We have to talk about Guru from Gangstar. Guru from Gangstar was the voice of Gangstar. He had that monotone voice, but he was very good at telling street stories and giving you principles and things to consider on a moral basis. Like, okay, yeah, you could be in the streets doing X, Y, and Z, but now look at the repercussions that come with this. Like, Guru was, he basically was like, look, this is the game in the streets. This is how the streets operate. And you better pay attention because this is going to be the outcome right here. And, he was slick with it. You had Jasmine Taz, A Moment of Truth. Guru was really loved in the industry, man. He was a real down-to-earth dude, peaceful dude. He was from Boston, and then he came to New York, and hooked up with Premier, and man, that was history right there. They are solidified in history. And so sadly, we lost Guru a few years ago. Guru died of cancer. Let me see if I can get the exact classification of cancer, because you have you got various forms, bone marrow, brain cancer, all that. So Guru died in 2010. And they said he went into cardiac arrest and fell into a coma, but he was also suffering from cancer. And I'm not seeing where they list what type of cancer it was. But he had passed, but cancer was the overall component in his death. So, that was sad. That was in 2010. We lost a giant. So that was Guru. His real name, Keith Elam. Keith Elam. So that was a major loss. He was from Roxbury, Boston. All right. Now, let me continue because, so many, man. All right. We had another big loss recently. Lovebug Starsky. You know, he's one of the original rappers and record producers. He passed this year, February 8th. Love Bug Starsky. And you know, he's associated with like DJ Hollywood. So he passed at the age of 57, and he suffered from a heart attack in Las Vegas. You know, and they say while he was moving speakers out of storage into his apartment, I guess is where the heart attack occurred. But yeah, DJ Lovebug Starsky. Man, he was one of the pioneers that we associate. You know, when we think of like I said, when you think of like the Sugar Hill Gang and Fab Five Freddy, he was of that ilk. He was of that era, and he laid it down. You know, he was cool with like Cowboy and Grandmaster Flash and Furious Five. So once again, health and hip hop. You know. Moving along, because I know, you know, we only have this hour to be intimate about our affairs. We had the death of Phife Dawg from Tribe Called Quest. Man, that was major. You know, Phife Dawg, come on. You know, Phife Dawg, Q-Tip, Ali Shaheed Muhammad. You know, man. That was major when we lost and Jerobi. I'm talking about, I'm not even mention Jerobi. So you had Ali Shaheed Muhammad, Jerobi, Q-Tip, and Phife Dawg. You know, their first album, Instinctive Travels. You know, the Low End Theory. You know, the Love Theory. They had so many great albums and great hits, you know, Check the Rhyme, Bonita Apple Bum, so many. But Phife Dawg, you know, he was born with type 1 diabetes. This is juvenile diabetes. This is not something that you get from eating too much sugary foods. Both diabetes, type 1 and type 2, and juvenile diabetes, they all impact your pancreas and your ability to produce insulin to break down sugar. But one is from diet. You can destroy your pancreas from the overconsumption of sugar, where your pancreas is overloaded with sugar intake. And so naturally it gives out because it's trying to crank out more insulin to break down sugar, and it's overloaded. And then you have one where you're born with, where just the pancreas itself does not produce enough insulin, and thus you're at risk for the complications of hyperglycemia, having too much sugar. And so we lost Phife Dawg a few years ago, and actually we're coming up on the anniversary of his death next week. So, you know, that's going to be very big. They had dedicated in Queens, they dedicated a street to him. So that was major. Man, I love Phife Dawg. He could freestyle with the best of them, you know. So he died March 22nd, of 2016. So it's coming up on the 2-year anniversary of his death next week. And of course, up the 5-footer also, because he stood at 5'3". So, yeah, so that is the death of Phife Dawg from A Tribe Called Quest. Let's see. Oh man, this one's major too. Sean Price. You know, you had Helter Skelter from the Boot Camp Clique, and Helter Skelter was comprised of Ruck and Rock. Ruck, also known as Sean Price. Very nice with his flow, his lyrics. He passed away in 2015, August 8th. August 8th, 2015. Man, everybody respected his wordplay, his delivery. It was a very bad loss. Brooklyn really, Brooklyn took a very big L when Sean Price passed away. And they said that he died in his sleep, August 8th, 2015. So, we're not sure. It could be sleep apnea, maybe. Usually when you hear about people passing in their sleep, they could pass from, a number of things. They could have a heart attack while they sleep, a stroke while they're asleep. But sometimes, sleep apnea is just where people are sleeping, but as they're sleeping, instead of just breathing normally, they stop breathing for a while. And so once again, that's a problem because you're not getting the oxygen that you need. So we had Sean Price with that. Rest in peace, Sean Price, New York MC. We also had the loss of Eazy-E from NWA. That was from HIV. And Eazy-E was one of those West Coast pioneers of NWA who they kicked in the door with the gangster rap. And unfortunately, Eazy-E passed away in the early mid 90s from HIV. And that was a big loss right there. Eazy he'd learned the record industry for himself with Jerry Heller, and he came up with Ruthless Records, and he put out a lot of artists and started a lot of careers. So rest in peace to Eazy-E. We had Pimp C, who was partners with Bun B out of Texas, and so they said they found him, I believe, in the hotel room. They're saying that it was from an overdose of, the cough syrup combination, but nobody really knows. I don't think they've even revealed the autopsy on what was actually in his system, but that's what they say. Some people say otherwise. But rest in peace to Pimp C. When we think of Big Pimpin', man, he really set it off in there. Rest in peace to Pimp C. Let's see. Is there anybody else that I'm pretty sure there's a few more, but I just, I put this list together just thinking of the show and trying to do it. So any of the other artists that may have passed away, from health conditions, we just salute you. Blame it on the brain and not the heart. We appreciate your contribution to this culture that we call hip hop. Every artist, whether big name or, let's say, you may have had like a hit or two. Either way, you paved a road. You blazed a trail. You left crumbs for us to follow and connect the dots to where we are today. So in the spiritual world, in the spiritual realm that you hear this, we thank you for your contribution to hip hop. All right. So this is Dr. Samori Swygert on the Pendulum on Source Radio Network. And we were just talking about the contribution of hip hop artists and the losses that we've suffered on the health aspect. You can reach me on Facebook on the Source Radio Network fan page, the 2 Minutes and Some Change, 2MASC fan page on Facebook. You can hit me on Twitter at DocSwag06, DOCSWAGG06 on Twitter. And you can also go to Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, and CD Baby, and you can find some music that I've done myself, actually, and the audiobooks that I've done. Very good work. And you can also go to YouTube, type in my name, and you'll get some different lectures and interviews that I've had, and you'll probably like those too. Make sure you tune in every Wednesday, 8 p.m., Source Radio Network for the Pendulum. And always stay tuned in the Source Radio Network. My colleagues are bringing so much insightful stuff from the music industry aspect, from cooking, from health and wellness, to finance, to fitness, to everything. Source Radio Network is the premier station where you can get everything that you want. One-stop shop of goodness and greatness. So with that said, I'm signing out. I am Dr. Samori Swygert, Source Radio Network, and the Pendulum. And just want to thank our sponsors for making it possible. Zuliana Health, Wellness, and Fitness, Paper to Film Productions, Revolution Mills, Renovations, Meet My Types Matchmaking, Blend to Blend Juice Bar Boutique, Urban Grandstand Digital, and New Covenant of Praise Worship Center. All right. So, Source Radio family, it's been a pleasure. See you again next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Peace.
Get at me for beats, y'all.